there's some underlying racism going on too. Racism doesn't just disappear because you change a policy. But I think they were nervous of putting those numbers on because, of course, you put the numbers there and your goals, and if you don't meet them, then what are you going to do? Okay?
So I see your main focus is kids and punishment. What is your main goal you want to achieve involving them?
Well, you know, the way I look at it, the goal of school, of course, in general, is to learn. But what we want out of school for our children is so that they are prepared for adulthood. And that could be going to college, going to a job, both. Some kids go to college, and I held a job when I was in college. And when it comes to behavior and discipline, to stay out of jail, frankly, and to not get in trouble. And there's this concept called the school-to-prison pipeline. What you see is kids who are suspended, not even expelled, suspended even one time, the statistical chances for them to end up dropping out of school, not graduating, and eventually in prison are astronomical. And, that cannot possibly be the goal of our education system. I mean, is that what we want to do? Have kids in school and then they end up in prison? I could see you shaking your head no.
No, definitely not. So what do we need to do to go about a change for that?
Well, there are different programs, and I think some of them are being implemented in the school district now. We'll see how well over time, where of course, it's not just enough to say, okay, we're not going to expel kids. I mean, what do you do? If a kid does a bad behavior, I mean, you don't want to just completely ignore it. That's not teaching them anything either, right? They might think, oh, it's okay to get in schoolyard fights or bring alcohol to school or whatever it might be. The program that I think has had the most success is called PBIS, Positive Behavioral Intervention and Supports, where you engage. Well, why did you bring that alcohol to school? Could you think of something different to do? Do you realize that you also got in trouble, this girl who you gave the alcohol? What do you want to say to her? And then they do have programs in school. In fact, it was interesting with my client. There's a program called Restorative Justice, where they will have a panel of kids such as yourself and be like, have a little hearing with the girl and say, or boy, whoever had the misbehavior, and say, okay, we're your peers, and we want to hear from you. Why did you do this? What do you think is an appropriate response? And so the kids can teach each other. And in fact, my client went through that at school, and her peers said, you know what, you've been punished enough. And so it was really interesting that, and by the way, there was no police intervention. They agreed. She'd already been punished enough. So having some of those programs, we want kids to learn from their mistakes. I am not saying, oh, make mistakes, so what? You need to learn from it.
So have you done anything outside of this work to raise awareness about kids and the discipline system?
Well, yeah, I work a lot with the media. As I said, I have a blog, System Change Consulting. My website, systemchangeconsulting.com, and there's a blog tab. You can find it there. I see Brandon has a recent magazine article in Wisconsin Lawyer, which was Wisconsin's magazine for all lawyers. Every lawyer gets it. But you can find that online, too, at the State Bar website, where I wrote about Wisconsin's school discipline law, which actually gives school boards tremendous power. Even though Madison changed its policy, it did not have to. Okay, so most school districts around the state still have a pretty strict zero-tolerance policy. And then I talked about the school-to-prison pipeline. So just raising awareness, I think, making people realize that, your kid could get caught up in this, too, with one bad mistake.
So what is your next step?
Next step? That's a good question. Well, the hottest thing on my agenda, I have a case that's scheduled for federal trial at the end of October. A client of mine who's in middle school in Sun Prairie, and he's got some disabilities, some emotional issues, so he's in special education. And a lot of the schools, one of the problems with school-to-prison pipeline, a lot of schools, some of you in high school, you've seen police in school, right?
Definitely.
And hopefully they're there to help. but sometimes they contribute to this problem of busting kids maybe a little too much. And in my client's case, my client left the class early. He was upset, but he was actually permitted to do that, to go to gym early, and that's what he was doing. But the teacher was a little worried that he might take off, so she called the school liaison officer to come just make sure he wasn't going to leave school, and he wasn't. Long story short, the cop took my client and pretty much slammed his head to the floor, gave him a concussion, a big black eye, and the good thing about it, the only good thing, is it was caught on the school security video. So we have video of it, and honestly, that's the only reason I took the case, because without video, I mean, I'll ask you guys, if a cop tells one story and a 13-year-old kid tells another story, which one are you going to believe?
Yeah, I don't think it's looking too good for the 13-year-olds.
Right, unless you got it on video.
Right.
So we have it on video. Case might settle. It's had a little bit of media attention. We've been on a little bit on TV and in the newspaper, and I suspect if it does go to trial, there will be more. So, also trying to point out that there's misuse of police in schools as well.
Definitely. So before we continue this great interview, the time is 9:29, and you are listening to Youth on Assignment on WSUM-Madison 91.7 FM. We will return in a moment after this public service announcement.